go quickly on a few slides to introduce the topics and the members of the panel, and then everything will follow this kind of procedure. I think a couple of members have few slides to show, say 10 minutes or something like, and then we will proceed with a normal presentation. Okay, and the members that don't have slides, they can do a sort of quick introduction about who they are and so on. Will be okay? And, industry engagement, and this is very important because if we find the right connections, we can boost the field. There is one member who has been added just 2 minutes ago from TSSG, so from Ireland. So we have Emre from ARM, and he's going to be the first one that will introduce why ARM could be interested in microfluidics and in particular in molecular communication. Shreyas, and from Nokia Bell's Lab, and then Filippo, you have also a few slides, okay, and then there will be a short introduction from Mirella and Denise. Okay, just to open, to throw some stones in the sense of to start. This is something microfluidics that I was amazed to get for free. Is a Minion from Oxford Nanopore in Oxford, and it's a microfluidic device, and it does a DNA sequencing, and so you see it's a mixture of electronic but also digital, because you read the sequence in your laptop, but what you have is a lab on chip. And I will not spend too much. This is based on a technique where an enzyme is fixed on a substrate, and the signal, sort of 5 or 6 bases crossing the membrane, gives an electric signal. What is interesting is that changing reorienting the potential, you can even have the DNA exiting or flowing anyway in a different position, and you can even discover new kind of epigenetic signals. Recently, this year, has been used to sequence the entire human genome. So this, together with a growing number of microfluidic devices, this is was a crowdsourcing one, it will probably give some ideas for a garage industry, or for our activities at least, so that you will see people with very limited amount of money being able to do experiments, or even to develop new technologies. So this is particularly people that are doing sort of quantified myself, that are always looking at collecting data of different kind about body signals of different aspects. Yes?
The Bento lab that you showed,
yes.
It's amazing work. It's a lab, small lab, portable lab, but no microfluidics.
Okay.
By Filippo.
I thought that there is a centrifuge, and then there is a gel, and
there's no microfluidics. You use small tubes for DNA, the regular tubes that you use in the lab. So Philip Boeing is the guy that made the Bento lab. It's amazing, no microfluidics.
Okay. Touché. And one of the ideas is that you can have a sort of a model of your body as into a sort of microfluidic settings, where you can study the communication, the communicome the ensemble of signals that the different tissues and organs are exchanging. And you can perhaps study aspects like cell decisions of stem cell, or the aging process, or how in some sense you can perhaps do better, innovate the transplantation or other. And this is just a recently published paper, and I wanted to just to show as a sort of detail about the liver. And this is another slide about how mathematical model could bring to a sort of design of a microfluidics. And I wrote down a few things, but I'm not sure that these are the main challenges, so I'm asking for your help. And so what kind of things could be appealing for industry? Because we know that molecular communication is central to synthetic biology, to the medical areas, to environmental, to microfluidic application. So how, in some sense, the fact that we are so central could be exploited better? And then how, in some sense, the growing needs for an in-body sensoring could be framed into well-posed questions that the industry could use. So I'm receiving time to time emails from, this is from a microfluidic company, for instance, and this is Helvesis in Paris, but there are others, and so at least they are trying to contact us. Okay, so we have we cannot say it's their fault. We have to do something, and I will stop here. Emre, do you want to start and so on? And everybody can interrupt, and we can have, instead of a tour of a city, we can in some sense exploit more time here, as much time you like.
All right. Okay, great. So my name is Emre Özer. I'm from ARM, the research department of ARM in Cambridge, in the headquarters. I am also responsible for the collaborative funded projects within the company. So a lot of people are asking me why ARM is in here. You know, you just build semiconductor processors, and so just one slide what ARM does. So most of you know that we build processor IP. We don't build chips. We just design and license the IP. But we have also other products from, mobile GPUs, ISPs, software compilers, and physical libraries as well. The most recent one is the IoT cloud platform called Mbed. Maybe some of you heard. There are hardware platforms similar to Arduino, so you can, there is operating system RTOS, you can run on it, and so these are the type of the things we deliver. But we are in the IP business, intellectual property business, mainly semiconductor, but it can be in other domains as well. So it's, as long as it's a well-characterized IP, we are interested. So I like this analogy. This is from Georgia Tech. I think a lot of you know him, Ian Akildus. I like this analogy. So the cell is the components within a cell is very similar to a typical IoT device we build today, from control unit, memory, battery, energy harvester, etc. It's a very nice analogy, but and people are actually in the synthetic community, synthetic biology community, start building interesting examples, like on the left side you see a gate and oscillators and the other circuit elements using gene circuits, DNA circuits. And this on the right side is one of my favorites. So they use a bacterial colony to recognize age detection in an image. you can ask, well, what is the use of this? But it's, you know, they are scientists, so they just want to make things happen. It's up to the industry to take this up and give a more, you know, set the vision, you know, for this to have the commercial adoption. So I like to talk about the, you know, this is our expertise, right? Semiconductor, silicon chip. So what is the evolution of the system abstraction and modularity? This is how we use it to build system, you know, silicon systems today. So I'll just take you back to 70s. So we used to do, you know, hand design transistor level in the 70s. And in the 80s, we start, you know, the abstraction increased, so now we start building, you know, more gate level design. And finally, in the 90s, the EDA companies came up with this the synthesis tool. So now we can write in RTL, VHDL, or Verilog, or your other favorite HDL language. And the synthesis tools take care of everything. And starting from, I mean, the timing may not be accurate, right? So 2000, 2005, we start building complicated chips, but using the IP model. So this is one of the system on chips used in the mobile phones. So what ARM provides is just the CPU. Here, you take the CPU, and the rest of the IP are put together by the silicon fabless companies, and they manufacture this chip in the foundries. So this is the model we use, and I call this IP component model. So let's look at the synthetic biological systems. So I'm by education computer engineer. I'm not a biologist, but I did some research on the you know, the field. So what is the evolution of these tools and EDA and languages? So we start in 2000. So you start building switch level, you know, very simple DNA circuits. And in 2010, so people are actually building more, you know, abstract, you know, more abstract modeling tools. So most recent one is the Cello tool. I think one of the speakers mentioned, maybe it was yesterday. You can write in Verilog and build a DNA circuit. So I think this is going to happen. Maybe it's already happening, but my prediction that we should be able to build, you know, this well-characterized parts and devices. We should be able to build some subcellular circuits. I think it's already happening, but my prediction is 2020 and after these things will happen. So what is this comparison? So interesting thing is this is actually going faster than the silicon world, right? So from transistor to gate level, it took us, from transistor to RTL level, it took us 20 years. But this community, synthetic biology community, is not inventing the wheel, so they're just borrowing our experiences. So they actually speed this up by about 10 years. So you can today write in Verilog your DNA circuit. Whether it's perfect, mature, that's another question, but the direction is right. This is how you build systems. So this is another thing I have noticed. So there might be, so this is how we build chips, more or less. I mean, there are some, you know, feedback loops, etc. Ignoring that, it's at a high level. We design using Verilog VHDL. We simulate. If the simulation is correct, the verification is done, and then you do gate level synthesis and all the way to place and route. This is all automated now. And you tape out, and you don't have foundry or fab in-house, so you send it, you outsource it to a foundry in Taiwan, TSMC, and you get the chip back. And also I forgot to mention the standard cell libraries, so there are very well characterized standard libraries, people use them. And I think this is happening in the synthetic biology world as well. So people start, you know, drawing blocks or writing in HDL and simulate it in computer before putting it on the lab. And now they they start characterizing the bio parts. So there are a few libraries like BioBricks and iGEM, and then you assembly similar to place and route to put them together, and you can send the specification, I call it dry lab out, to wet lab or wet fab. So there are companies today like Twist Bioscience or Ginkgo, so you just send the specification and a week later or so you get your sample. If you're not interested in sample, they just send you the report. I mean, this is how we do in the silicon world. So we don't know what TSMC does when they manufacture. Once we get the chip, we test it, bring it up, it works great. Maybe TSMC put things there, so no one knows, right? So as long as the stuff you build is working, this is good enough. So what else goes faster? So we know that the synthetic biology community is borrowing a lot from us, which is the right way, and it's going faster, this abstraction. So what else going faster? So I'm sure a lot of you saw this. So the cost of DNA sequence is faster than the Moore's law. So in particular, in around, if I am reading correctly, around 2006, 2007, I think that was the point where the generation switch happened from DNA sequencing, and that speeded up the thing. So this is really good news for this community. By the way, also the DNA synthesis, the cost of DNA synthesis is also going down. Maybe not as fast as the cost of sequencing, but that's also good news, because it's important to have very cheap sequencing and synthesis for this field to boom. So what are the opportunities? So it's just my personal view on this. So I think we will have programmable synthetic cells that will have, you can use whether existing cell as a chassis, or it could be completely synthetic, but I treat it as a compute storage unit, so it will do some compute, it will have a lot of sensors to sense, and it will have some recording device. So I don't want to go into details, so how you build this, but this is just this will eventually happen, like a ship like that, considered as a cell. It will circulate in the body, and it will just sense things and record and come back and report to a base station or some other device within the body. And this includes also the element of communication, which is the target of this workshop. And it will have a lot of users, not in medical diagnostic, but in the other sectors as well. And this is another view. So I think we should be able to build more synthetic multicellular systems I wouldn't say in the near future, but sometime in future. And this is my, this will be quite interesting. Can we actually, so as you know, neural networks are extremely popular now, and we are trying to build them in silicon as hardware accelerators. But can we actually build a synthetic neural network, very small size, using synthetic neurons to understand how brain work, and also build maybe a better, like a synthetic artificial intelligence I wouldn't say it's a brain, but at least a portion of it to understand, and maybe use it as a compute device. We still, don't know, how all these neurons were. Maybe someone mentioned on one of the speakers the astrocytes. I think they've recently found that astrocytes have a significant role in compute. So that will help us to understand things. But the question is, when these things will happen. So I'll give you an analogy. Maybe this will give some ideas. So I know it sounds irrelevant, but this is 1985. So let's do some time travel. 1985, Cray supercomputer. I don't know if any of you remember, but it was quite bulky and power consumption is 200 kilowatts, and it weighs 2.5 tons, and it costs around 12 to 17 million, and only 27 sold. I mean, these are the public information I found. Maybe it's one plus minus.
What was the processing power and data like that?
Yeah, I'll come to that. So now let's move in, to 2010. This is iPad 2 tablet. Power consumption is 5 watts. Dimensions, as all of you, most of you have this, very small. Less than a kilogram, $800 at the time, and 20 to 30 million sold. So I have a question. Do they have anything in common? Anybody can answer that? What do they have in common, these two systems?
Computational power.
Sorry?
Computational power.
Yes,
It should be equal.
exactly. So the computational power, I mean, ignoring the fact that the storage is still close to each other, but the computational power in terms of gigaflops is the same. So the question is, this took us 25 years to build this. Right? From this, now we have a tablet. I could have asked the question actually, with the Cray supercomputer. I could have asked you, how many of you have a Cray 2 supercomputer today? You will probably say no, but you have it. You have in your, it's the mobile, this is 2010. Your mobile phones, Samsung iPhone phones are much powerful than the Cray 2 supercomputer. Yeah. So my prediction is, we are at this stage in synthetic biology. We are in 1985. But with a lot of borrowing from Silicon world, the experience from our engineers, I think we working with the scientists, biologists, we can make this much faster. What is important is the scale. So look at how many sold in Cray, 27. Very niche, right? This is niche, but this is not niche. This is commodity. So to make synthetic biology commodity, if we work together, and inspired from the Silicon world, borrowing from the abstraction tools, modularity, and other engineering principles, we could maybe see something more commodity. Everybody's using DIY synthetic biology, maybe 2030. It's much faster than what we have done in the Silicon world, and that's it. Pietro, I'm done. Yeah.
I think that the second one, I think we can do a couple of these three in a row, and then we start. It would be also interesting to compare Armo with Bell's Lab. I suggest also the audience to make nasty questions.
And we ask now nasty questions and we ask now later. And we ask now nasty questions later.
Well, let's go for.
Okay, so my name is Shreya Shah. I'm coming from the States, New Jersey, where I'm at Nokia Bell Labs. And so I have an interesting perspective because, as you may know, Nokia Bell Labs is known to be a telecom company, or now as it's referred to as ICT. But I come from actually a biomedical engineering and a chemistry background. And so I was actually working, when we were talking about molecular signaling and kind of controlling cells and biology, my work was actually in trying to guide cellular behavior. And so when we look at a cell, and someone spoke earlier on signals and cues that guide this behavior, you have soluble cues, which are like in the blood, cytokines, and these factors. You have factors that are insoluble, so that's more of a tissue engineering perspective. You have a scaffolding approach, and you have cell-cell interactions. And so the combination of these different cues affects how a given cell in the body behaves. So in terms of a cellular response, when you're looking at stem cells, you're talking about differentiation. When you're cancer, you talk about migration. And so my work as in PhD was more about using technology that is at that scale of cells to kind of control their behavior. And so in this case, we're talking about nanotechnology. And So there's a whole nanomaterial toolkit with which I got a chance to work with. So when you look at inorganic materials, whether it be something like a metallic nanoparticle, magnetic, even upconversion, if people have heard of this, something where you actually put in low energy light and you get high energy light out. And then on the other end, you have organic nanomaterials or more biomaterial based substrates, which can interface much better with the body itself as we see it. And so with that, I worked in an area where, in particular, I was looking at neurotechnologies, so kind of combining nanomaterials with biomaterials to get this interface. So when we look at, for example, multifunctional nanoparticles up in the top, there's some work where we're using a stem cell as a carrier, for example. So we put in a magnetic particle and a plasmid, which was heat induced. So in the presence of heat, the plasmid would turn on and it would secrete a factor which was to address cancer. And so it's basically kind of combining multiple fields, and you could see kind of a molecular communication aspect where you're now controlling a system which is living. And so that's more from a soluble perspective than moving to a surface where you could actually pattern a surface with different materials on different surfaces and guide behavior. Forget about the molecular aspect now. Just based on the surface, can you mimic those same molecular aspects? So just by the shape of the surface or the stiffness of the material, can you guide that? And then now when you combine the two, what kind of effects can you get? And so that was more from a 2D perspective, a soft lithography aspect. And then the last one was like more of a 3D aspect. So areas of optogenetics and remote drug therapies, where you're using light to actually induce some sort of change in a cell or release depoys of drug in there. So this is kind of the background I came from. And now when you think Nokia Bell Labs, which was formerly AT&T, believe it or not, there was work going on in the biofield about a decade ago. Where they were playing with monkeys and rats and opening up mice and doing that type of work. And there's DNA nanomotors and a lot of stuff that came out of there. But traditionally, even now, the idea is about inventing the future of human experience. As a bigger organization, that's how it's viewed. So 1925 is when Bell Labs started. This is out of New York at that time. And always the focus was on communication from a telephone perspective. But the way Bell Labs is kind of structured to think, now this is everyone in the company, is more that you have this core need that we're going after. But during that investigation, if there's some general understanding that comes out, the scientists are free to kind of pursue that goal. And as a result of that, what you see when you see the achievements over the 80 to 90 year history is that a lot of different technologies came out which may or may not relate to telephone or communication, but something like the transistor. You have on the top left side in the 40s, you have the CCD camera, which is on every phone now. You have lasers, you have Unix, you have C++, and this is all just over the years what's been achieved in that time span. And many might be familiar now when we're talking about communications, Claude Shannon, right? So this communication, this information theory we talk about, the father of information theory, is Claude Shannon with his pivotal paper in 1948. We're kind of outlining what is like the basis of which all this is built. So this is kind of what it's achieved up until now. And you could see kind of the thinking behind which this is all based. And so even today, I mean, over the years, this started off as AT&T, then became Lucent and Alcatel-Lucent and Nokia. So there's been up and downs in terms of organizations, but the core thinking and how it goes about the research has pretty much been same, or it's emerging much more now. And what I like to just point out, again, there's 17 global locations. There's a location right here in Ireland, which I got a chance to visit for first time. But this idea of a 10x vision. So the idea that, it's not about making an incremental change in the market. That if someone has it going at a certain speed, you just speed it up twice or 3 times. The idea is to really look from the future back as an orthogonal need for the industry. And one example I'd like to just give is, how many people know Star Trek here? Maybe here and there. It's an American science fiction series. from 1960s where it started. And what's amazing about it is now this is, I guess, one notion of creativity or imagination, where when you see in Star Trek, they had all of these technologies. In the 60s, we're talking a communicator, right? A holodeck, a replicator. And when you see now, you have kind of a replicate of that in nowadays, where you have something in everyone's pocket, which is a communicator, right? The cell phone. Virtual reality, augmented reality. I don't know if Pokemon Go really took off in Europe, but in the US, people kind of went crazy, and some people died playing Pokemon Go. But this idea of augmented reality. And then you have 3D printing that's going on to it. And then there are, to say, Star Trek had some more other outlandish ideas, which I wouldn't say we're addressing with, especially with a transporter. But this is what we like to see as a Bell Labs hard problem. Right? This is something with the tricorder. You might have heard of the Qualcomm tricorder competition, where the idea is to build this device which in theory scans a person and it spits out all this information medically relevant about the person. So this is kind of where, when we say Bell Labs hard, this is kind of the idea where you have not just one little technology, but it's how these technologies come together to form more of this network or integrated approach. And with that, when we look at a technological revolution, there have been many, right, over just in the last 250 years or so. And what I like to point out is when there's one side is enabling technology, but the connectivity is what has a profound effect on economies and society as it grows. And when you see financially, for example, it started with kind of the movement of money, right, finances. Then you get to the Industrial Revolution, where it's actually movement of physical goods, right? With steel and steam engines, it allowed for this movement of physical goods. And then when you get more into this century, now we're getting into that digital world, right? Where you're passing first bits, then you're getting to bytes. We're able to pass more and more data. And really, when I say Bell Labs and what it's looking at, Nokia, it's a networking company when it comes down to the end. So this idea of a future X network, we have something with self-driving cars now, right? Now when you have self-driving cars and you have a little gap in the network, it could run a stop sign. It could run into the guy in front, right? So the idea of having basically zero latency and high bandwidth, that is an important factor. And so I'm not gonna go into all of this because, again, I'm not even familiar with the full aspect or the breadth of this, but these are aspects at Bell Labs which are being covered, all the way down from basically having self-configuring, self-optimizing networks which accumulate all the way up to the cloud and getting up to machine learning aspect. And where this comes into where I'm in, and now connecting my background and what Bell Labs is doing, it really comes down to the human revolution. So as a human, when we're talking molecular communication, how is it relevant when it comes to an actual individual or the human need? And so to never be offline, to always have that network which is in body, on body, and around us. So it's kind of where does all three of those come together? And so with that, on the one side, we acquired a company called Wittings, where now we're talking more from a wearable perspective. You have a device which is measuring vital signs. And the idea which is being explored is to do deep learning on this, where the deep learning comes more to the actual wearable. And so it's not about raw data anymore, where you're collecting so much data and no one has time to analyze it. But you have these neural networks which could do that analysis on site before it even gets to the cloud. So that's where this edge cloud computing comes into play. And going one step deeper, and this is kind of where I'm coming into the picture, is how do we go beyond vital signs to biochemistry? So this might be the new picture. If everyone wants to take a picture of this in the next 5-10 years, don't be surprised if you see people walking around the street with more and more stuff all over their body. But what's fascinating with the research area is that what used to be stiff and hard with these chips, it's becoming more and more flexible. It's stuff that's becoming right intact with the body, with tattoos which do the same RF and powering. But really, I think, and we believe one of the key aspects that's really left is with these wearables, you get vital sign measurements. With vital sign measurements, but how do you get more intimate biochemistry? And so this is from the molecular communication perspective, how do you tap into the communication that's happening in your body, but maybe in the least invasive way, a very facile way to kind of probe that in a continuous fashion. And so with that, we have a lot of interesting work going on, which was already ongoing and which a few of us have brought on board. We're kind of the basis of having a lab on a chip, where it's a microfluidic system, where you start integrating light, and you start integrating electronics. You get an optofluidic, or you get a multi kind of system going. So there's a lot of work ongoing and expertise to bring all this onto a chip. And on the periphery, you'll see other aspects that are more biological in nature, whether you're actually making not droplets, but actual particles, maybe that could act as sensors, for instance, and you have stimuli responsive materials on the other end. Then you have ways of using this optoelectronics to look into the skin, into the body, and kind of get a sense of what is happening at the cellular and the molecular level. And finally, this is the last slide. It's basically going beyond the five senses. We have our five senses through which we take our input, but is there a way to augment that? So you get a more intuitive sense of both the environment around us, as well as maybe intuitive sense of inside what's going on. And that's where the molecular aspect comes in. So again, I've just kept it broader to give a little overview, but be happy for questions and dwelling into how else we're looking at this. Thank you.
So, in the meantime, let's thank in order to catch up with the structure of the panel that we have seen on the I would suggest that we stop for a moment of introductions and we start a bit with the debate and the discussion, and then we will see also the other panelists what they can offer in terms of introduction. It's okay. So what are your ideas about where is the industry and how far? Please.
Yes.
One second. Say who you are, because this will make, since we want to build a community, the community is good that you know each other.
Okay. I am Giacomo Morabito, University of Catania. I liked a lot the comparison between the more low and what's happening right now. I don't know the field, so I mean, I might be mistaken, but my impression is that for what concerns the silicon case, the industry was leading these advances. I mean, it was the industry mainly that was investing money and these kind of things and resources there. Obviously, there was also the academic world, but mostly there was industrial investment. Do you think it is the same right now with the synthetic biology case?
Yeah, again, so I am new to synthetic biology, but from my research, what I've noticed that the big companies are very slow, including the pharmaceutical companies, are very slow to move into this domain. And there are so many startups, especially in the US and some in the UK, around synthetic biology, and they are driving this. And I think the innovation will come from the small companies, even though I represent a large company. I think they are more agile, they have more free room, they can get funding from the government, and maybe in collaboration with the universities, I think the innovation will come from there.
Thank you. So I would also like to react to Emre's position statement, and try to make an effort to bridge it to the audience, which might be closer to the communication aspect. I think that the analogy you suggested is very valuable. I fully second that. And it also allowed a forward-looking speculation. And that's because the system is very similar. You have a very, very vertical system, very hierarchical, different levels of encapsulation of the abstraction. That's true for silicon chips, of course, but also true for nanobio nano networks, where the communication is either within the cell, among cells, or in a larger system, whether the neural system, the heart, or the immune system. So the analogy, I think, is very valid. And in turn, you can leverage all the experience of the silicon design chip companies, the very well-structured design methodology, and the supporting, in quotes, EDA tools for flow. What I was missing, I would like to ask you about an extension. In complex chips, system on chips, you not only have computing, but you do have communication. From the very basic interconnect up to very sophisticated on-chip networks for many core computer architectures that you have now. Now, what I was missing in the biological counterpart is to encompass also not just molecular computing and synthetic biology, but also the molecular communication aspect. That would be one extension of your analogy, if you wish.
Yeah. So one of the opportunities, the first opportunity in this programmable synthetic cell, so to speak, like you have a synthetic cell like a ship traveling in the bloodstream. It has to have a communication. So either it talks to the other sentinel cells, or it talks to a base station, which is some implanted semiconductor-based recording device. Right?
Indeed, but you might agree with me that
yes,
up to now,
communication is essential.
And
you
might agree with me that
I agree totally.
Hitherto, synthetic biology community and even markup languages there mainly were focused in computing aspects. Now, second reflection on an analogy which I very much liked, very inspiring, the other one about how in synthetic biology we shrink the time and evolution is faster. I support that analogy, but I think that there's a unique difference. In silicon design chips, you stopped at 2005, where combining and juxtaposing different IP blocks allows for complex functionality. But from then on, now we need to take into account the variability of the process when you take scalability into account. And nowadays the paradigm is opportunistic computing. You need to take into account this impaired performance at device and circuit level to achieve system-wide performance. Now, my reflection is that in the biological case, that is intrinsic and should be taken into account upfront. Computing and communication in molecular biology is intrinsically, has to be opportunistic. And approximate, it's approximate computing in the silicon design, it's approximate computing and communication in molecular biology.
Yes, so that's actually an interesting point, the approximate computing. So far, the systems we build have to have, as you know, extremely, robust. That's the word. So, we can't even tolerate a single event upset in the chip. This was crazy. So now we engineers, when the technology node shrinks, now we start seeing these vulnerabilities, and we start putting more effort on it. And now there is a school in computer architecture community. They just focus on, look, we can't go like this, so we need to build system more, doing approximate computing. It doesn't have to be all accurate all the time. And I think it's becoming more, it's going to be more stochastic, which is what the biological world as well. So, yeah.
Denise, Mirella, Filippo, Shreyas, would you like to add something on this topic?
I would like to simplify a little bit the comparison between biological systems and computers, or biology and engineering as it is at the moment. I would like to bring it in the realm of control.
So it took about 1,000 years or even more, thousands of years, until we managed to do the transistor, then until we had a couple of decades, until we managed to get the computer. And then once we managed to have control over it, it went faster. Now, biologically, we are connected to biology, but we lack a lot of control. Once we manage to get some control, it's going to go faster. So once we figure out a synthetic biology flow, workflow, how to manipulate genes, how to assemble them, CRISPR-Cas, a lot of things is going to go faster. So one comment that I have apart from the control thing is you're mentioning something about pharma companies. So let me try to put it the other way around. Let's say that I come to ARM and I say I can prove in my lab, fictional, I can prove in my lab that I can use my microbiome, that are the bacteria that I have on me, to compute. Would you use this technology instead of producing smartphones or your ARM processor or something like that?
Well, they are not alternatives. So that's right. So no one will build an HP supercomputer using biological. That's very stupid, right? So biology works slowly. But if, yeah, but I can build a biological compute unit that can go into your body and monitor, sense you, monitor. This is more efficient than putting a silicon-based chip that's being digested by your, it's your system, right? Which one will be more reliable? The application matters. So no one will ever build a supercomputer using living cells.
I'm not completely agree because biological tissue. If you build a machine which is made by some bio something, you will have it which is biodegradable, which is good things. We will gonna have problems with garbage coming from electronics. We already have it.
Build a supercomputer?
Well, it's just a question of money. If someone, if someone will demonstrate that with the power of parallelism, some biomachine will have the same, teraflop power, then they will just make it. It's not a question. And what I'm saying is that the added value will be that probably we'll have less, garbage of this kind of sort.
Okay.
So.
Let's try like that. Don't underestimate the computational power in an organism, because it's insane. The machine that's going, the cellular machine, is highly computational. It optimizes for everything, the way proteins would work. And I'm going to give it to Shreyas. Maybe he can help me more because he has a biochemical background.
So I understand your perspective, because biologically computing, I guess we haven't reached that state where it compares to computers and this advancement. But if you think of the brain alone, right, the computing power of the brain, it's all cellular and organic. And yet, like memory, for example, right? Well, you're building memory into 32 GB, 64 GB. You have memory from years back. Somehow, Login, we haven't unlocked how that's done, but there's possibility to unlock that. In the current state, it doesn't seem like that. And I can see your point in putting in something that is biological, but there is a counter argument when you look at the system.
I want to keep this going. I'm going to get popcorn.
May I ask a question to all panelists related to your comment and your reactions? I think that you started, in a sense, bottom up in terms of computational power and metrics. Is it faster? Is it lower consumption? We can stay there. But can we flip the question and talk about top-down system attributes? Would those systems be more reliable, resilient, versatile, /adaptive, etc.? Not the way they are structured, but they are performance attributes at system level.
My idea is, a biological system is not deterministic. So we are now used to handle computation in terms of reliability.
Do you have any short presentation?
My presentation was really along the line of what she says. So I'm more interested in coming from another community, which is those of people making mathematical models of biological systems. So I'm more interested in the sensing equipment. So that's what I envision as, the development of this community, or what the industry will be for a community like yours, because I think there is a big opportunity. But anyway.
So if I remember, you had some contact with industry, because recently there was a
yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing is that there is a lot of interest. I mean, up to now, what is measurable, it's somehow simply measurable. What I'm saying is that it will be great if in the future people will be able to measure in vivo things like pertaining, let's say, the immune system activity, for example. I'm talking about measuring cytokines on the fly, or counting cells in the blood. And all these kind of things are now doable ex vivo or in vitro, which takes time, which is still okay. I mean, I don't know if you want to add something, but there's a lot of work to do in terms of devices which are able to do these things. And I think it comes from community like yours and community of solid matter physics, basically. I mean, material science.
So part of your activity, research activity, is modeling the signaling aspects of cells. Cells is very...
Yeah, it's modeling the systems overall. So, of course, anything new which would come from this molecular modeling community will be good in terms of new ideas for models, basically.
A lot of it now, and then I will go to Andreas. A lot of it now has been on the molecular side. Probably, Denise, do you have any? Can you introduce yourself and say if there is something about health and mobile that could be of interest?
Sure. So my name is Denise Manton, and I am a research manager in TSSG, working alongside my 4 other colleagues in the room here, Sazi, Daniel, Alan and Michael. So my background is very different to everybody else's on the panel. I have spent over 10 years in the life sciences industry. I have a computer science background and fell into control systems engineering, is the way I would describe it, being involved in greenfield sites right up to commercialization of products. So I would have a very different perspective, I suppose, on how to stimulate industry engagement. So I think one of the things, again, I liked the analogy earlier as well, where we're in 1985, and one of the other things that you have to take into consideration is the regulatory side of this, and the compliance, the FDA, and understanding how to help industry overcome those types of issues, because this is still, while as you say, there's growing interest in it, it's still very, very new for industry. So there's a fear there, and they don't know how to take it maybe to the next level, and it is more along the lines of startups and spin-outs from universities and institutes that are taking it a step further. But I think being able to, while you don't want to stifle the innovation at the experimental stage, I think having that appreciation of compliance and regulation at that level, that will help build a good relationship with industry, because they need to trust people they're working with. Another way is maybe within your institutes and universities to work with some of your colleagues who have traditionally worked with the likes of pharmas and biopharmas. If you're coming maybe from a more ICT side of it, they may already have those relationships built up, and that's a big thing, because at the end of the day this is touching a patient. So there is, it's not about just changing a line of code or building the next supercomputer or whatever it may be. There is a patient at the end of this, and that brings an extra, I suppose, responsibility to it. So from, I suppose, what the guys are talking about here, I can appreciate it, but I think that on a very practical level, there are a number of things that need to be taken into consideration from, as you say, we were talking about mobile health earlier as well. You mentioned about HCI, that's obviously hugely important, and I think the interdisciplinary nature as well causes complications, but it's required, and it does give obviously an extra complexity to it. But I think, I suppose, there's a few things that can be brought in there from a very practical level that will help stimulate further engagement.
Can you say who you are?
Okay. My name is Göksal. I'm a computer scientist and interested in computational design of biological systems, mainly in synthetic biology. So my question is there any collaboration within industry? Is there any work together to create a common roadmap, common vision, or to help researchers collectively? Or should we approach companies each individually?
I know that, okay, I know that Europe had, in terms of funding, a huge track established in, what was it, FP6. The name was Virtual Physiological Human, which many of you probably know, and this track is still ongoing in FP7, actually started in FP5, I don't remember, anyway. And the guy who are driving this effort are still, you know, they have a lot of energy. They have funded an institute in England, in Sheffield, and they are pushing a lot to get in touch with the industry. So they are involving them very much, and they've opened the channel, and they are getting feedbacks from the industry. So I see interest, that's the point. On the other hand, if we look at the huge, you know, pharmaceutical industry, I see some inertia to my idea coming from the fact that the vertices or those who take decisions are old people and they have no idea what we're doing here. So they are still in that kind of mentality in which the drugs are made by chemistry and only. That's my feeling. And they move slow. That's why probably startups are the best vehicles for this kind of technology.
I think there's definitely an opportunity even for the people in this room, and I've been talking to Alan and Michael and Sazi about this as well, but there's opportunity to influence the next Horizon 2020, the 2018 to 2020 work programme. Well, it's probably a little bit late actually on that because they've already issued the draft and it'll be finalised in September. But for the next side, I think there is an opportunity to go to the Commission and start changing that mindset at that level, which allows you then bring in these industry partners in a model maybe that they're familiar with as well. But it's probably up to the likes of the people in this room to actually drive that influencing of the Commission.
I think the Commission should start a flagship program on synthetic biology. And it's up to you guys. So we as a semiconductor company, maybe we may not, and UK is leaving the European Union in a couple of years. I mean, less than 2 years. So for the other European partners, I think you should just push for it, and then they should create. So they created quantum computing flagship program recently. Graphene is there, and human brain project. I think synthetic biology must be the next one, and it's up to you guys.
So it's interesting. From the Bell Labs perspective, it's very academic in nature when it comes to research. So it's kind of like an academic lab in an industrial setting. So, and I really mean that, because whenever from the management side, when they're promoting a given project or direction, the question of commercialization or, you know, what is the cost and what is the market for this, it's actually negligible. Because it's in a unique setting where we have a parent company with Nokia, and there are things that have reached market, which is the target. So when it comes from an academic mindset to advance something, the collaboration opportunities are much more lenient for us. So so they even say, like, you know, if there's a sensor that someone has, either in academia or industry, you know, don't bother building it. Connect with them and take it the next step further. And so that's the kind of mentality at least we have when it comes to this. And so over the last year, I personally have talked with many different collaborators, both academia and industry, to see how it fits into this vision of an end-to-end network.
So that's, I have to say who I am. I'm Ryan Silva. I'm really interested in design automation for microfluidics, and I guess my question sort of spins off of that. It seems like there's a gap where industry seems to be interested in doing their own research in in universities in an academic setting. If there is a capability developed that's paired with an application, then one ought to expect a lot of startups being spun out. And really the only capabilities being developed for industry seem to be like being developed within that company, rather than going out and saying, hey, we've got this cool idea for droplet-based communications, but we're looking for somebody to pick it up as a capability. Bottom line, what I'm saying is, it seems like you guys say that, hey, there's a lot of opportunities to pick up capabilities developed in universities, whereas the existence of all these startups being spun out of academics tells me that that's probably not the case in practice.
Before you answer, let's also listen to what Milano has suggested, when we can process.
So sorry, I think I have a slightly different comment or view. So it was about how to connect biology with electronics, and whether this is going to be the next sort of revolution is going to happen. And I see that it goes hand in hand. Wherever that is useful to use biology and synthetic biology to design circuits and connecting that with electronic components, the way that's going to go, I guess. We see already companies like, I have good contacts with companies like medical device companies like Medtronic and GE and so forth. And when I talk to them, and they say that they believe in this type of work, and they believe in they call it as a bioelectronic, the segment that they are building, and actually they believe that the pharmaceutical companies will eventually be collaborating in this area, because most of the things that people can do with devices have been quite effective when it comes to human medicine. Of course, you can argue that drugs have been there and they are effective and so forth. The investments done there actually takes much longer time, and now there is a new interesting area coming up. It's called organ on chip. I think we didn't discuss so much here today because of lab on chip and everything. Organ on chip is actually it's a very interesting area, really trying to push the development and the testing of different drugs. And we believe that within that organ and chip type of platform, integrating electronic components, but they're talking about nanosensors, nano needles, all these things are going to be sort of integrated so that we will be able to accelerate both the pharmaceutical industry and device industry in this area. So I think it's going to be a very interesting period of time that we see a lot of interesting innovation coming out. And also very happy to see that companies like ARM and also Bell Labs, of course they come from a very academic tradition, looking into this and see some interesting opportunities and willing to work even. Traditionally we see that it's most of the innovations are coming from startup companies, small companies, and I also have some contacts in Stanford and also with companies there. And for example, Google actually has a big lab now working on this type of area. So it's interesting that big companies also investing a lot of money, and I don't know whether you guys want to make any comment on that.
Microsoft as well. Microsoft in Cambridge,
too, yes.
They have a biological compute group recently formed.
Yeah.
Okay, something quick from the members of the panel, and then we can hear somebody else.
Yeah, I think I see it kind of as two areas. One, when you're saying with devices, you're kind of on chip. So when you're talking organ on chip and putting electronics, you have one aspect of interfacing. And then when you're talking on the body or inside the body, there's a whole different, I feel, an interface of control that comes in, and where compliance and FDA come in. So it's kind of two bins that are advancing.
I don't have comments.
Okay, so anybody else that wants to say something about how to progress, what to ask to the industry, and how to progress in molecular communication in the academia to move on.
Meanwhile, I would like to introduce myself as well. So I'm Mirella Alistair, and my expertise is in microfluidics, namely droplet-based microfluidics. I'm mostly my background is mostly academia. My contact with industry has been during my PhD. I've done an external stay at Advanced Liquid Logics, now acquired by Illuminum, the only company that released commercial device using digital microfluidics for DNA sequencing. And I've also had 2 startups stemming from academia.
Okay.
Can I just make another comment there when you were saying of other things that can be done? I think, again, I think it was alluded to maybe by yourself earlier that what length of time, and it goes back to that, where are we right now? I think what's really helpful when you do engage with industry is to appreciate that they've got their R&D pipelines, they've got their product pipelines, and to be able to build on that is to, to know the research you're doing, is it 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out, to kind of have that in your head as well when you're talking to people, to try and get their buy-in, I suppose, and try and so that they understand that you understand the pressures that they're under as well on their way.
Tuna Toju from Boğaziçi University, Istanbul. Engineering is based on actually recursive research. So you develop something, you get some feedback, and fix things and develop a new version, and this is how it grows. The medicine world is quite different. They're quite slow because of the restrictions put by the regulations. So the engineering world and the medicine world are 2 separate worlds. As long as we don't find a way of fixing this, we will not be able to catch the speed of innovations we had in computing, electrical engineering, and communications. So I don't know how to do it. It's not easy because they have some logic in doing it that slow because it relates to people's lives. But the times are changing, so if somehow we can contribute in maybe some other track of regulations for this kind of research, it might help us to work faster. Otherwise, we will have to slow down to their speed.
I think that's a really valid point, and there's a research group here in Ireland called the Regulated Software Research Group. So they focus specifically on this. They are computer scientists by background, but also regulatory specialists combined. So they are working with the large pharmas, med device companies, and other universities to try and help people be agile, keep moving fast, but at the same time they understand what the various medicine boards, what the various compliance bodies are looking for, and that's what we need. It's the kind of process around that to allow us to deliver it. So there are I suppose a number of leaders in that space that are doing it. It's trying to link up with them, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is also happening in this virtual physiological community modeling. They have established what is called a panel of study called the In Silico Clinical Trial, which is actually also a track in European funds, which basically wants to demonstrate that people who do models are able to, submit results which are in line with the results that clinician can submit, or at least can help in this. And in this process, they have to establish contacts with, those who really determine if a clinical trial can be accepted or not. So that it's not just, there is a lot of bureaucracy behind, there's a lot of policy behind, which requires efforts which scientists are not used to do. But probably we should be also equipped to, to make that step if we want to speed up things, as just suggested.
That's a very important point, vital point, but it should not stop academics to do crazy research. I think they should still continue. It should not affect. Maybe companies like this, we need to be, we need to look into this, we need to speed this up, FDA, what is this? You build something, 3 years later, you get the the certification or not. But for researchers, they should not. You should not worry about it. Some of you may be interested in this problem. Go work on it. But some of the crazy, disruptive ideas, do it. Just do it. Don't make regulations stop you.
I'm going to address directly the question. So I have a solution. It's controversial. So I'm trying to build around it a little bit. I think the regulations are there because of the way medicine is being applied, which is in a very centralized way. So somebody decides and takes the responsibility for someone else. If you take responsibility for yourself, together with precision medicine, with personalized drugs, using the fact that we have all this advancement right now of knowledge and access to knowledge, then it could work that these regulations won't apply anymore. It's okay, it's legal in all the countries that I've been into to take a photo of myself and put it online. It's illegal to do that to another person. So I cannot take a photo of you and put it online without your approval in many countries. It's illegal. The same way, if I am the doctor and the way medicine is being used or applied is by me saying, or having a medication for a certain patient. What about enabling the patients, enabling each one of us, giving us power to decide, giving us the tools, giving us the knowledge, and enabling us to a certain point to make decisions for ourselves. And then it's controversial how much the regulation applies and how much it does not. But I truly believe that decentralization is a way to go as well.
I wanted to add that along the line of what you said, basically this is already going on, because if you're using, the Fitbit to understand how much you want to walk, no one will stop you. On the other hand, to go in the direction of what you said, we don't want to substitute the doctor, but we want to offer the doctor some other instruments. So it will still be him to decide what to do. Our job will be to make medical devices, self-monitoring devices, which then, converge the information to the doctor. So I don't see too much problem.
Just a quick point on that, though. With the Fitbit and these medical devices, one thing to keep in mind is a big issue is who does the data belong to start with, and who does the liability lie on. So when you talk about decentralizing and these aspects, these are bigger questions which I guess might need more regulation when you're trying to get rid of one. So just one thing to...
This has to be part of the discussion, in fact. I mean, this in silico clinical trial committee is also brainstorming about this and speaking with, regulatory agency. It's a real issue. Yeah.
Just trying to close this, I wasn't planning to contribute, but at least tomorrow we should perhaps go from regulations into ethical implications of this work. And at least tomorrow in the roadmap panel we will be working and we'll talk about the ethical implications. But I'm mainly ignorant on implications of this. I wanted to try to build a bridge between academia and industry, and I might be a bit controversial, but hopefully constructively. And I plan to share with you what we are doing with both IEEE, but also with the Commission in Brussels, because this problem we are facing is not unique to us, to this community. So probably it's not just a point-to-point bridge, but it's probably a mesh, a 2D bridge between it. Perhaps being summarizing or simplifying the situation, in academia, individual researchers, research groups, indeed, as Emre, you were saying, we mainly work in a given discipline or a given sub-discipline or in a topic or in a given enabling technology in different groups. We will keep working in interdisciplinary topics because it's in the overlap of two close adjacent disciplines that new emergent knowledge appears. We will keep working on that. Might be that some companies, large companies, would like to take some of this new knowledge or technologies. But I do think that very large institutions, including large companies, which are research-oriented, do need to address applications if you are very much market driven, but else you are driven by verticals, systems, eventually grand challenges, humanity grand challenges if you wish. All of them, which seem very diverse, whether they are IT or they are into any other areas, are always multidisciplinary. They are always complex systems that are based combining different subsystems or different key enabling technologies and the like. So that's the matrix-like structure I would suggest to consider. Academia mainly generating new knowledge interdisciplinary, and then companies collecting all this new knowledge and activity aligned to this, verticals or applications.
Before we start, I need to say that we have 5 minutes, and then we have to move somewhere else to continue, perhaps in public, because the room seems...
The cafeteria.
Yes, or the pub. So, 5 minutes. Anybody that wants to say something, or now or never?
So I like how you brought that up with bringing a connection between academia and industry, and I'm not sure if you're alluding to this when you said the big challenge. Actually, that's what came to mind before you said this. And so we have like a Bell Labs challenge. So anyone could apply, and mostly academic groups apply. And the idea is that they have to come up with basically an innovative solution. And now it doesn't have to be in a particular field. Like right now there's applications that are coming from synthetic biology, from electrical, from a design perspective. And what happens is that they're paired with groups within Bell Labs. And then what happens over the next months who are selected, they go through a process where they work together. And now there's no market, there's no commercialization, there's none of that on the table. It's just a matter of taking an idea and seeing by putting like minds or even different minds on it as it goes along, connecting more people and seeing what can we come up with. And you know, as a reward for the other, whoever came up with the idea, there's some prize award from their side. But this idea of having a challenge and kind of stimulating, I think it's something that's picking up. And there's even a mammogram thing. There's someone who came from Apple who said that they put out challenges through Sage Bionetworks. So for example, detect cancer in a mammogram using machine learning. How can you best detect it? And then that brings together teams, and once those teams come together, they could pair up at later stages in the challenge. And so this is, I mean, it's not a one final solution, but it's a means to bridge.
Would you like to say how to, for instance, we go to tomorrow discussion? Shall we go to the cafeteria, or how would you like? How do you feel to continue this? What is?
May I ask you something? I mean, what will be in a 10 seconds sentence? Your idea of involving people. What would you do if you had the magic hand? What will be your approach? Wait an email, go and ring them, putting a blog on the internet. I mean, how can
sitting in the same room to start?
Sitting in the same room, but would you like to have a solved problem, or you want to tell, look, this is the way I would like to solve the problem, give me the money? It's a complete different approach. Because, I mean, if you are a startup, you basically reach a point in which you have the solution. And then they will, buy you, basically. But if, I mean, we are still a bit back. I mean, we don't have yet a problem which is solved, and we probably need money. So, but I mean, big company, they don't really respond to this kind of solicitation. That's a problem. So I think we should make an extra effort and solve the problem, and hope to scale it up. What do you think?
Maybe there's a mediator between industry and academia. There are companies, I think they're in the US, I mentioned one, Sage Bionetworks. We just met the person who started that last week. And they're trying to connect both clinical, academic, and industry through different approaches. And so, for example, they had one thing from a computer science or algorithm point of view. There might be people out there that have an approach or a way to solve something, but they don't have data. But if they had the data, so what can they do with this? So there's proposals where they put forth, okay, we have this, this, and this way to do it, but we need this particular type of data. So then they submit it to this mediator company who will go through the proposal and see, okay, you know, this is worth it. And then they'll connect them that with, let's say, some clinic who has that data. So that is a paradigm which is coming up. And
so two last things. Would you like we set up a sort of blog where you can write some ideas about this, or where you can state some last thoughts? And second, Alan, would you say something about this evening?
So this evening we'll have our meal booked. It's in Fade Street Social, so it's a restaurant in around the Temple Bar area. What we're proposing to do is, so there's no city tour at 5 o'clock, which was on the schedule. What we'll do is we intend to meet outside this building at around 7 o'clock, and we'll take a walk through the city. We can go through the Trinity campus and down along into Temple Bar, maybe stop for a couple of drinks along the way or something like that, and make our way to the restaurant for about 8:30. So if people want to join us, 7 o'clock downstairs, or you can join us at the restaurant at 8:30. It's up to yourselves.
Can you say again the name of the restaurant?
Yeah, so it's all on the program there. It's Fade Street Social, and there should be a map to the restaurant in the program details as well.
Would you like if we continue this discussion through a blog or some other way? Would you like to collect some additional thought that would come in the next days? What is your idea?
I think what would be good is we'll be basically transcribing all the audio and all the comments. We'll prepare a report and we can put that out for people to comment on and contribute to over the next. This is all recorded as well, yeah? Yeah. So that's, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Let's thank the speakers.